This week on Jerusalem Dateline, U.S. Vice President Mike Pence tells CBN News' David Brody that the U.S. is taking one more step towards moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem.
President Trump is actively considering moving the American Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Plus, Israel marks the 70th anniversary of the UN partition plan that helped establish the modern state of Israel. And enjoy the sounds of the street in Israel. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. CBN's David Brody sat down for an exclusive interview with U.S. Vice President Mike Pence. Brody asked Pence about some of the crucial issues facing Israel and the Middle East, including whether or not the United States will move its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And what does the administration plan to do about the plight of persecuted Christians in the Middle East?
Your Egypt-Israel trip, very important. Outline the goals for me, and especially as it relates to persecuted Christians, because this has been, well, quite frankly, you and I know, and this has been near and dear to your heart for a very long time.
Well, first and foremost, it'll be a great honor for me as Vice President to represent our nation in Israel. I've actually been asked to speak before the Knesset, and I'm very humbled by that. If the world knows nothing else, the world should know this. Under President Donald Trump, America stands with Israel. And we'll be delivering that strong message. It was 70 years ago that the nation of Israel, in a miracle of history, came back into existence in its ancient homeland. And every day Americans have cherished that accomplishment, and we'll be there to celebrate that. But as we travel through the region as well, we'll also reaffirm our commitment to peace in the region. And the president's made it clear that we want peace. But people should know that President Donald Trump will never compromise the safety and security of the Jewish state of Israel in the midst of that process. I'll also be traveling to Egypt, where we'll be talking about the issue of persecuted Christians and religious minorities across the wider Arab world. I couldn't be more proud of the fact that in the wake of seeing half of the Christian population flee from Syria, 80% of the Christian population has now left Iraq, that President Trump made the decision to now begin to funnel U.S. support, not through the United Nations in every program, but for the first time directly through USAID to help rebuild Christian communities and the communities of other religious minorities that have for too long been neglected.
Will that start soon?
We're hoping to make announcements during my trip through the region, David. And we've been working with religious leaders, not just Christian leaders, but leaders of other religious minorities. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the work of Ambassador Nikki Haley. I'm grateful for the work of Mark Green at USAID. But we've told them President Trump wants this to change. As the American soldier has made that extraordinary progress in Iraq and in Syria, defeating our enemies, we want to make sure that every community, people of every faith, have a place to come home to. And we'll be using American resources to make sure that happens.
Quick follow-up, the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. You've talked about it. You used just recently actively looking to move the embassy to Jerusalem. Where are you where is this White House in the process of that? Because very important, evangelicals.
For the past 20 years, Congress and successive administrations have expressed a willingness to move our American embassy. But as I announced earlier this week, President Trump is actively considering moving the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and it's a very serious matter. It's one that he's taking very seriously to heart. But the President and I believe that the relationship between the American people and the people of Israel is one that is timeless. I mean, literally before the founding of this country, there were Americans who prayed for and dreamed of Israel returning to its ancient homeland. And through the tragedy and tragic events of World War II and the Holocaust, and through strong American leadership at the United Nations, Israel was restored to her homeland as the old book says, in a day, in a moment. And I know the President is reflecting on the decision about our embassy and other policies, but it's all informed by his commitment to the relationship between the United States and Israel, and his knowledge that the American people cherish our ally Israel, and we always will.
The commitment to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem began long before President Trump was inaugurated. As you can see from this story, when he was president-elect, it's been a long time in the making. During his campaign, Trump pledged to move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Some believe one possible location for the U.S. Embassy would be at the current site of the U.S. Citizen Services Office. It's located here in a Jerusalem neighborhood and considered a logical choice for a future embassy, but it's not the only potential site. According to Israel's Channel 2, another choice, the area of the nearby Diplomat Hotel, currently a home for elderly immigrants. The U.S. owns the property, but not the hotel. A third site is this abandoned lot in the busy Talpiot neighborhood, owned by the U.S. Former Israeli Finance Minister Yair Lapid says Trump's pledge to move the U.S. Embassy is an excellent idea.
It's about time. We are sitting now in Israel's capital.
According to opinion polls, Lapid is seen as a top contender for Israeli Prime Minister in the future. In response to a question from CBN News, Lapid told foreign journalists that every embassy should be in Jerusalem.
This is our capital. We waited 2,000 years to come back here, and we expect the world to acknowledge this fact and to recognize Jerusalem as our capital, and therefore we should have here the embassy.
He related a story from former President Obama's trip to Israel.
I remember not long ago on Shimon Peres's funeral, the White House issued a statement saying the president was in Jerusalem, and then they changed it, not to mention Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And this was in Western Jerusalem. It wasn't even in Eastern Jerusalem. And I think this is preposterous.
No country in the world recognizes Jerusalem as Israel's capital. But in 1995, the U.S. Congress passed the Jerusalem Embassy Act, mandating the move of the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. So far, every president has avoided the move, citing security concerns and signing a special waiver. Moving the embassy wouldn't make everyone happy.
There will be happiness on the Israeli side, there will be unhappiness on the Arab-Palestinian side. There may be riots, there may be violence.
Some say the move must come in the wider context of an Israeli-Palestinian peace agreement. Others believe Jerusalem is Israel's eternal, undivided capital. Coming up, a former U.S. general warns about the rise of Iran's influence in the Middle East, the role of Russia in the region, and the plight of persecuted Christians. In September, Iraqi Kurds voted overwhelmingly for independence from the Baghdad government. Then it seemed the world, including the U.S., abandoned them. Now their dream of freedom has turned into disappointment. Just days after 90% of Iraqi Kurds voted for independence, the Baghdad government shut down their only two international airports. Then the Iraqi army, backed by Iranian militia, struck another blow by taking over the disputed oil-rich province of Kirkuk. Middle East analyst Jonathan Spire explained Iran was the power behind that military campaign.
The Iranian role was very prominent and openly declared. That is to say, the leader of the Quds force of the Revolutionary Guards Corps, General Qasem Soleimani, was in Kirkuk in the days preceding the Iraqi and Iranian military move.
Iran's involvement solidified its goal of building a land bridge from Tehran all the way to the Mediterranean. During the fighting, the Kurds also accused the Iranian-backed militias of using U.S. weapons, like this M1 Abrams tank, against them. Some Kurds criticized the U.S. for opposing their independence and blamed the West for basically abandoning them, although the Kurds proved to be a key ally in the fight against ISIS.
America and Europe were very disloyal towards the Kurds because they made the Kurds fight ISIS instead of fighting themselves. They turned their back on us. We lost all our faith in the United States, in Europe, and everyone.
One of the few nations to stand with the Kurds is Israel. But some experts believe how the U.S., the world superpower, responds may well determine the future of the Kurdish people. During our coverage of Kurdistan, we have often met with retired General Jay Garner. He joined Mark Martin in our Virginia Beach studios to discuss the plight of the Kurds, the growing influence of Iran, and the plight of persecuted Christians in the region.
Well, first of all, what's your view of the situation in Iraq today, especially Iran's influence?
Well, I think Iraq is a puppet government of, in fact, I know Iraq is a puppet government of Iran. It's been that way since we left in 2011, and it's not going to change. And if we allow Iran to control the Kurdish north, then the whole country will be a total puppet of Iran, and it will allow the Iranians then to complete their land bridge that goes from Tehran all the way to Beirut, and allows them to then put far more terror and pressure on the Israelis, and it will cause the few remaining Christians in the area to flee.
How does all this affect Iran's threat to Israel?
Well, of course, you know, Iran established Hezbollah under Assad's father in Lebanon. And then what's happened is Hezbollah has become a state within a state inside Lebanon. And so their money, equipment, training, everything is funneled to Hezbollah from Iran. And so we allow them to continue to establish this permanent land bridge. They had one before, but it was intermediate. And so if we allow them to establish this permanent land bridge, that will be able to funnel far more equipment, far more weapons, far more terrorist equipment to Hezbollah to inflict more damage on Israel.
Well, what about Russia's role in the Middle East? Do you feel like their presence poses a danger to the United States and Israel?
The Russian footprint that's going in there is very, very serious, I think. Plus, the Russians, for the first time now, are dealing directly with Iranians. And so there's a lot of Russian influence. What the Russians are doing, they're filling the vacuum that we're leaving. We're leaving a big vacuum there.
Well, we talked a little bit about this earlier in the interview. We talked about the Christian population in Iraq. What do you think about the future of Christianity in Iraq?
I think it's in danger unless we prevent the Iranians from controlling the Kurdish north. And if we now step in and we support the Kurds up north and we protect them, then the Christians will remain there. There's probably 250,000 Christians there now at the most. You know, there's over 1.5 million before 2003. But if we don't do that, then the Kurds have no choice but to become Iranian proxies. And once that happens, the Christians will have to leave. So you have no Christians in the area for the first time in over 2,000 years.
So there is a movement for a Christian state to be formed in Iraq. So you believe that the U.S. should get behind that?
I don't know that there's a movement for a Christian state, but what would happen in the Kurdish north is they would designate their area there as a safe haven for Christians throughout the region. It already is, and they would just make it official. And the Kurds have always protected the Christians. In fact, some of the Kurdish politicians are Christians. And so, but if we don't support the Kurds, then they have no choice except to be an Iranian proxy. There's no other choice for them. And if that happens, then of course Christians have to leave. They can't survive in that environment.
Well, let's switch gears now and turn now to North Korea. The country is getting more belligerent, firing a ballistic missile Tuesday, and it says it has the capability of reaching the U.S. What is your opinion on how we should deal with this rogue state?
Well, first of all, you can't let it continue. And I think what I would like to see us do is put a Aegis cruiser, one or more Aegis cruisers in the water on each side of the peninsula and engage those missiles as they're launched, and just tell Kim Jong-un, you know, we're not going to allow you to launch any more missiles. We're not going to allow you to test any more missiles. You're not going to be a nuclear country. You're not going to have nuclear missiles. You are a nuclear country, but you're not going to have nuclear missiles. And if you take action against us with that, then we'll not only destroy those missiles, we'll destroy where they were launched from.
So even if it's just a missile test, you believe that the U.S. and its allies should shoot that missile down?
I absolutely do, yes, absolutely. Not let them get the test results from it, not let them be able to advance to the next stage from it. And then if that doesn't work, then I guess the only thing we can do is go in there and prevent him from establishing. If he gets a missile with a nuclear warhead on it, he will use it. I mean, the whole country's unstable.
So do you support a regime change?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, how can you treat people the way he treats them? I mean, he has a population that's starving to death. He doesn't take care of them. I mean, you know, we just captured a soldier, and the Army's supposed to be the best fed of all of the soldiers, full of worms and parasites. So you can tell that if he's the best fed, then what's happening to the civilian population?
So what do you think that the U.S. should do to move that forward?
I think what the president's doing, he's continuing to put pressure on it. And I know that in the president's own mind, there's a place at which then he's got to take action. He's got to take probably some sort of, if he can't do it diplomatically, which I don't think he can, we never have been able to, then he's got to do it kinetically, and he probably will. And he has to, because we cannot allow him to develop that missile that can hit our nation.
All right, General Jay Garner, thank you so much for your time and your insights.
Up next, it happened 70 years ago, and some call it a miracle.
Today is the 70th anniversary of a great miracle. A miracle that was anything but guaranteed.
November 29th is a very important date to Israel. This year marks the 70th anniversary of the United Nations decision calling for the establishment of the Jewish state on November 29th, 1947. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl explains the significance of this historic decision.
Those who are in favor will say yes, those who are against will say no.
They called it the Partition Plan. UN Resolution 181 called for the establishment of a Jewish state and an Arab state in British-controlled Palestine.
It represented the acknowledgement of the international community of the right of the Jewish people to establish a state. Also the right of the Arab people to establish a state in Palestine.
The Partition Plan was so significant to the Jewish people that cities throughout Israel have named streets after the date. Kaftet B'November, the 29th of November Street, like this one here in Jerusalem. In honor of the anniversary, Israel's mission to the UN celebrated by returning to the hall in Flushing Meadows, New York, where the UN vote took place.
Today is the 70th anniversary of a great miracle. A miracle that was anything but guaranteed.
In this very hall, when the United Nations declared to the modern world an ancient truth, that the Jewish people have a natural, irrevocable right to an independent state in their ancestral and eternal homeland.
The plan set aside land in the Galilee, along the Mediterranean, and the Negev Desert for the Jewish people. The Arabs received all of biblical Judea and Samaria, later known as the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and other small portions. Perhaps the most controversial part of the plan was that an international body would control Jerusalem. Still, the Jewish people accepted the plan.
The Israelis didn't like it because it didn't give them Jerusalem, and it didn't give them Eilat and all the southern Negev. But they accepted it because, okay, this was the best we can get.
Arabs, however, gave it a thumbs down.
They not just rejected it, but they waged a war not just against the state of Israel, but against the UN resolution.
Israeli Ambassador Alan Baker told CBN News, it's ironic that today Palestinian Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas uses the 70-year-old resolution to call for his people's right to a Palestinian state.
There was no such thing as a Palestinian people. Then the Palestinians were the Jews living in Palestine. And so he claims that Resolution 181 is their Magna Carta for establishing a Palestinian state because it guaranteed a Palestinian state and a Jewish state. And he's misleading the international community. And of course, they rejected it.
Ahead of the anniversary, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said, the most important thing for Israelis is remembering to connect with their past.
The first need for the next 100 years is to remember the 4,000 previous ones. That is the first thing that will ensure the future of the Jewish nation in the land of Israel and the state of Israel.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Coming up, take a look and listen to the sounds of South America on the streets of Israel. Israel is a magnet for people from all over the world. One of our CBN News producers found this South American musician who entertained Israelis on the streets of Mount Carmel.
¿Y por qué vino?
Como todo muchacho joven quiere conocer la vida, conocer el mundo, conocer a muchos espíritus, mucha gente. Yo creo que la música es una medicina para poder compartir con alguien. Y ese alguien eres tú, yo, todo el mundo que le gusta escuchar la música colombiana, israelí. Caballo le dan sabana porque está viejo y cansado y se va por la mañana con su pasito apurado a verse con su catraca que lo tiene para bastar.
We hope you enjoyed this story, and it's an example of what you can find on our social media channels. So you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube. We also want to thank all our viewers watching us in Russia on satellite channel KRIK TV, and for others around the world. That's all for this edition. Thanks for joining us. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.